feel like worship with Arlene on Sundays is like a breath of fresh air every single week. So, Arlene, thank you so much for leading us in worship and pastoring us through those moments. We just really, really appreciate it and are grateful for those moments of fresh air that are much needed right now, especially. So today we're starting a new series on Advent, and I don't know if all of you are familiar with Advent. It is typically definitely celebrated in more traditional denominations in the Christian church, but I think it's such a special and important time, and so I'm excited for us to be able to celebrate Advent together as a faith community. And today is the very first day of Advent, and basically Advent, it's derived from the Latin word Adventus, which means arrival, and it's just this time. It begins, with the 4 weeks leading up until Christmas, and it's just this time during which we can reflect on how we can prepare for the coming of Christ. It's this season that invites us into this habit of waiting. It's that time where you know that you aren't yet fully liberated, that you aren't yet fully healed, but at the same time knowing that the liberator and the healer is coming. It's a time when we can reflect on the fact that Christ came thousands of years ago, and that Christ continues to come and to meet us every day. And during our Advent series, we're going to look at 4 different themes of Advent, and we're going to look at hope, peace, joy, and love, and the ways in which we can wait on Christ to bring those things into our lives, and how we can also embody these things in the middle of our waiting. And Advent is a time of anticipating the coming of Christ, just like the Jewish people anticipated the coming Messiah thousands of years ago. When we look through the scriptures, we can see the different prophecies that were foretold, particularly one in the book of Isaiah that we find in Isaiah 9, 6, and 7 that says, "For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing it and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever." So Advent is a time of remembrance. It's remembering that Jesus came to us as Emmanuel, God with us, physically as a baby, and that also in this time of waiting and anticipation, it's believing that Christ will continue to come and meet us again and again. And I think right now, more than a lot of years in the past, I find myself really embracing the meaning of this season of waiting. I think because of our current circumstances that we were in as a world right now, I'm much more aware of the waiting this year. I think one of those reasons is because life is just slower right now. Typically around the holiday season, usually the month, especially the month of December, is just packed to the brim with events and holiday parties. And I have 4 kids, so usually it's, all of their Christmas productions and their classroom gift exchanges. And we're usually having, staff Christmas parties and just so many things on the calendar. And right now it just feels like everything is much slower. And so it is enabling me to really more fully embrace this season of waiting. I miss some of those things, not all of them, but some of those things I definitely miss. And at the same time, I want to take advantage of this slower season and really position my heart to prepare myself to welcome the coming of Christ once again, to meet me in my life where I'm at today. And, to be really honest, I think all of us are feeling that waiting right now. We've literally been waiting for some very specific things this year, right? We're waiting for the pandemic to be over. We're waiting for a vaccine to come out. We're waiting to see changes happen in our world that so desperately need to happen. And then just in our day-to-day life, maybe you're waiting for a job to open up. you're waiting for restoration in a relationship. Maybe you're waiting for healing. Whatever that is, we often find ourselves in a place where we are waiting for and believing for something that we cannot yet see. We're believing for something that maybe our current circumstances kind of say the opposite of that, but yet we're waiting for the thing that we so desperately want to see happen. And I think something else really beautiful about Advent is it kind of invites us into the both and. That's something that's really beautiful to me about the waiting. As humans, we can often tend to live with very binary thinking where it's very much either or. We can have an either or mentality where it's like either you're brave or you're afraid. Either you're grieving or you're rejoicing. You are hopeful or you're discouraged. But I think actually a more honest existence is to live and exist in the both and. That's more true and more real, that we can be both brave and afraid at the same time. We can both grieve the loss that we are facing and also rejoice in the goodness that's around us while we grieve. We can be both discouraged by what is and at the same time also hopeful for what could be. I don't think we have to choose between the two things, but rather we can honestly exist in the both and I think this is part of the beauty of Advent is it teaches us to wait expectantly for hope and peace and joy and love, even if we cannot yet see them in existence in our circumstance. Even if we feel like we're still waiting for those things to be true, Advent teaches us to wait expectantly and in anticipation for those things. And so today we're going to specifically take a look at the theme of hope. Advent, it ushers us into a time where we can reflect and we can be still and we can allow hope to be stirred within us. And especially right now in a time where everything very much feels like it's out of our control. I can't think of a more important time to hold on to hope and to foster it into our lives. It's like we're in the middle of a giant literal object lesson right now when it comes to waiting and fostering hope. And we don't have to reach very far to know what it feels like to hope for what's to come. At least I know I don't. When our future is uncertain and we feel out of control and we have no idea how things are going to pan out, hope has this way of shining a light. And it reminds us that hope actually does its best work in the dark and in times of uncertainty. When we feel overwhelmed by the suffering around us, when we're overwhelmed as we hear the death toll from COVID continue to climb, when we see that people are being oppressed and pushed to the margins, and hope has this way of infiltrating into that space, and it tells us that it doesn't have to be like this, that there is a hope for things to be different and to be better. When we're grieving a loss and it feels like we might be swallowed up in that grief, hope shines its light and says that this isn't the end, that there is more to come, there is better to come, that this is not the end. Hope breaks into the dark and it breathes life into our tired souls. Hope is resistance in the face of oppression. Hope has this way of quieting fear and despair. And I love that we can look to the scriptures to find so many examples of people who held on to hope, even in the middle of the most dire circumstances. There are so many individuals who kind of paved that way for us, that we are able to read the examples of these people and the way that they lived their life and the things that happened to them, and we can gather so much hope just from reading their stories. We can hope like Hagar hoped, as she saw God meet her in the wilderness as she fled abuse, and she was the very first to name God, the God who sees. We can hope like Esther had hope, that she could secure safety and justice for her people. We can hope like Ruth had hope when she made her home with her mother-in-law in a foreign land and dared to believe that redemption was possible. And we can hope like Mary dared to hope when she said yes to the growing of the Son of God in her belly, believing that he would one day bring down the mighty from their thrones and that found in him there would be liberation for all. These women and so many more throughout Scripture, they really have set the stage for us to lean into the possibility of what can be despite what currently is. They show us that hope is something that we foster within our souls, and that it's also something that we put feet to, that hope is both a state of being and it's an act of faith. Hope is something that we actively participate in the way we choose to move through the world. Hope is like these women and what they did. They said a holy yes to participating and creating the world in which we want to live. And in the same way that they had the capacity to hope, we too can have the capacity to choose hope. And so this morning, I would really love to hear from some of you this morning. I would love for you to, if you don't mind, if you could just over the next few moments, I'll give you a few minutes to kind of think about it, but I would love for you to share in the chat, what are you hopeful for right now? What are some things that give you hope? What are some ways that right now you are choosing hope over despair? And while I give you a chance to think about those things and to type those in the chat, and I'll come back to it here in a second, but I want to share a story that happened to me last night that is really giving me hope right now. It was a conversation I had with my youngest son, and I am probably going to get emotional. I'm just letting you know. But I was having a conversation with my youngest son last night, and Landon, he's 5, and he always gets very chatty and philosophical at bedtime. He suddenly has lots of things he wants to talk about when it's time to go to bed. And honestly, a lot of nights I'm tired and I just want him to go to sleep because I'm tired and I want to go to sleep. But I've learned to really pay attention to these moments because oftentimes we have our best conversations during those times. And so he was laying in bed, and I always sit in his room with him until he falls asleep. And last night he's laying there and he said, "Mom, you know how God is everywhere and God can see everything?" And I was like, yeah, I know. And he said, I wonder if when people die, if they can see everything too. And I said, but it's a really good question, and he goes, well, I guess we just won't know, because we've had lots of conversations about there's just some things that we can wonder about and that we don't really know for sure, and I said, you're right, bud, we don't know for sure. But then I thought for a second and I said, but you know what? I'm like, actually for me, I said, sometimes I like to imagine that the people I love who have died can see me, because it helps me in those moments to feel close to them. When I'm missing them a lot, it helps me to imagine that, and it helps me to feel close to them. And so I talked with him about, how I've lost my dad, and one of my cousins died, and my grandpa and my grandma. And he thought for a second and he said, oh, and the actor that plays Black Panther. Because when Chadwick Boseman died, that he and I both were very sad about that and talked about that. And I was like, yeah, him too. And then I started telling him specifically about my grandma and how I especially miss her this time of year. And I shared with him memories about her and I at Christmas time, about we would sit in the living room sometimes after everyone else was asleep with all the lights off except for the Christmas tree lights, and we would talk. And every year at Christmas, she made the best fudge, like the most delicious fudge. None of us know her recipe because it was in our head, and so we're not able to really recreate it, but we all loved her fudge. She was quite famous for it in our city. And I talked about how funny she was and how much she took care of me and how well she loved me. And Landon said, he's like, yeah, would me and Izzy and Elena and Jackson have really liked her? And I said, yeah, bud. I said, you would have loved her and she would have really, really loved you. And we wrapped up our conversation, and I sat there in the dark as he fell asleep, and I just had this moment where I'm sitting there with my son, with this precious, smart, amazing kid who has his whole life ahead of him and who finds so much wonder and magic in this world. And I felt so lucky that I get to have a front row seat to that. And at the same time, I also felt this heaviness and this sadness as I thought about my grandma and about how much I miss her and all the other people in my life that have died that I love so much and that I miss so much. And in that moment, Christ met me there. Christ came as Emmanuel, as God with us, and Christ continues to come to us every day, in every season, in every circumstance. And in that moment, Christ came to me, and it filled me with such hope, even in the midst of sadness and grief. And it was just such a reminder to me that Advent is about both and, that Christ comes to us, that we can experience both grief and joy at the same time. That I could be so sad about losing my grandma and about missing her, and also rejoicing in the time I had with her. I could be so sad about the loss of that person, and also so hopeful about the life of my son that I get to have a front row seat to witnessing. And just such beauty in that, such beauty in the hope that Christ coming to us brings. And now I want to go to the comments here to kind of look and see what people are saying. And I can't see. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Okay. Oh, Kat said, hoping my new job is really my dream job and that I'll be in my own home by the end of January. God took away a job I hated and gave me one I love. I've learned over the past few months that I am always covered. God always has me covered. What a beautiful, just that idea of God always covering us. It's a beautiful expression of hope. Adam said, I'm hopeful when I see my daughter Ezra. I am hopeful that she will appreciate the differences in others. She will see people of color and see value. She will see LGBTQ couples and see love being shared. I am hopeful that she will see the world without having to take off the burden of things she learned growing up. That's really beautiful. We find such hope in kids, right? Like in this next generation, they give me so much hope. It's so beautiful. So I just think, this morning that I just want us to remember that it's so possible for us to be able to find hope and for hope to meet us right where we are. And here's what I want to do. Hold on. There's some more. Okay, Olga says, Icon family brings me hope. Sunday mornings bring so much peace and light. Hope that with all the chaos in the world, we will all find peace within ourselves and everyone else. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Olga. Oh, and then Jenny Wisty says, Anna says, her little girl Anna, who is a kindergartner, she says that we are all your brothers and sisters, Pastor Kelly, and we are here to help with hope. This is giving me hope. Just our community and the way that we love one another is just really, really beautiful. Yeah. So as we start to wrap up today, and you can continue if anybody else, I'll jump back onto the comments here in a second to be able to share the things that you're thinking and that you have on your heart when it comes to hope. But I want to kind of wrap everything up today with this. There are, many, many really wonderful Advent devotionals out there that you can get. And there's one that I found this year, and we're going to throw the link for it in the comments, actually. So that way, if anybody wants to order this one, you can. But there are just many, many really, really good ones. But there's one this year. There's a woman by the name of Brandy Miller, and she has a podcast called Reclaiming My Theology, and she's brilliant. And every time I listen to her talk, I'm just like on the edge of my seat because she's just, everything she says is so good and true. And she came out with a new Advent devotional. And so it's at reclaimingmytheology.com. They actually have you can order a physical copy of one, but then actually if you want to be able to start it today, you can also, they have a PDF version that you can get where you can just read it on your phone or a computer or iPad or whatever. And today what I want to do is I want to end with just reading, the reading for for day 1 for this Advent devotional by Brandy Miller. And it just says this: preparation is a partnership. Advent most simply means arrival. So, on the first day of Advent, we wait and we prepare. We wait for the world to be as God intends it, the world as it should be. We wait for a world free of injustice, pain, and violence. We wait for a world free of racism, sexism, homophobia, and ableism. But it is not enough to simply wait. We must also prepare. Preparation goes beyond dreaming and invites us to participate in building a better world. The way of God will not come to exist in fullness, separated from God's people, but rather in partnership with them to make things right. And so we prepare. This partnership is present at the original Advent, the arrival of Jesus. God partners with Mary to birth God incarnate. God partners with Joseph to keep Mary from public humiliation and rejection. God partners with Magi to announce Jesus, and God partners with the shepherds to confirm the miracle. We must open ourselves to the movement of the divine around us, one that might invite us to partner too. Because as we wait and prepare, we look ahead to the hope of a better world that comes because of our partnership with God, not in spite of it. This preparation is a holy act of hope. And so the invitation that I want to give all of us today is the idea that Brandy talks about in this devotional, this idea of hope coming in the form of partnership. We hope for a better world, and we get to partner with God to make it so. That is so powerful, that we get to partner with God to make it so. And so I guess today, my challenge for all of us is, how can we partner with God in creating a better world? How can we partner with God in creating a better world? How can we partner with God in the way we parent our kids, in the way we treat our neighbors, in the way that we look to see those that are in need, those that are being pushed aside, those that need love and warmth and hope? How can all of us partner with God to create the kind of world that we want to see? And I can't answer that for all of you. You know, we all just have to kind of look in our own lives, in our own worlds, and in our own spheres of influence and decide how we can do that. But I would just say for all of us that as we are in Advent and as we are waiting and training ourselves to be hopeful and to wait for the coming of Christ in our day-to-day, that we would look for ways that we can partner with God to bring hope and to create the kind of world that we want to see. So, just going to look over to the comments one more time just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Janine said, "You guys are a community of hope, a place for the marginalized to rest, be accepted and loved, and to be seen and heard." And Locke and Sabrina said, "I find hope in all the amazing, ordinary people doing God's work in the world." Yes, that's us. Just a bunch of ordinary people finding ways that we can do God's work in this world. Well, that is all that I have for today. I am so grateful that all of you joined us today. I am also currently bracing myself for Dan to kind of break the solemn mood by implementing some Christmas sound effects that he was frantically searching for during worship and like uploading. So you can, oh my gosh, there was like 20 of them. Okay. I don't know. And now he's just staring at me. So watch him not do any of the sound effects. So I just look really ridiculous right now. So. There we go. There it is. What is that?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. That was real nice. You'll have to search for some better Christmas sound effects for the coming weeks. So although there are a couple weeks where other people are going to be bringing the message, so he won't be able to necessarily do that to them. So, but anyways, see, we can have solemn, serious moments and have fun and laugh all in the same like 20-minute span, right? It's good and healthy, and yes. So anyways, I love all of you so much, and would just invite you to, in whatever way works for you and your family, to celebrate Advent and to take some moments, as much as you can, to be able to practice the waiting. And hopefully all of you eKids families got your Advent bags for your kiddos. Amanda, it was her idea, and she put all of them together, and they're so fun and so special. So if you are an eKids family and for whatever reason you didn't get one, you can always shoot us a message, and we would love to be able to get one to you. So that is all. And you guys have a fantastic week, and we will see you right back here next Sunday.